Hey everyone, welcome back to GPX, and today I wanted to talk about something pretty cool because Resident Evil 2 is now officially the best-selling Resident Evil title. Taking a look at this information is a little bit old, it kind of came out a week ago, but it's something I really wanted to talk about because I'm actually playing through the game myself right now, and the rest of us at GPX Japan are actually going to hit up and do some streams pretty soon, so we had to talk about it. If we look here, the best-selling Capcom game apparently is Monster Hunter World with 19 million units, which is this is quite a lot. You got Monster Hunter Rise at 13.2 million. This makes a lot of sense because Monster Hunter is just so big in Japan. World was meant for a more worldwide audience, but Rise is just pure hardcore Monster Hunter through and through. A lot of people love it. It's very, very popular, so it makes sense. However, right there, we got Resident Evil 2 at 12.6 million. Now, before this, Resident Evil 7 was actually the best-selling title at 12.4 million units. Resident Evil 5 and 6, surprisingly, pretty high up there at 8.8 million. Both, actually. I wonder how accurate that is, though. And is that even including Switch sales or anything like that? This is units, but is this really including digital titles, too? I'm not sure. It says DL, so maybe, but I don't know. After that, we got Village, which was 8.3 million. Resident Evil 3, which is 7.6 million. Actually, we can look further down the list. And we got Resident Evil 2, the original, at 4.96 million units. Again, that's quite impressive, but here it says PlayStation. So again, does that include GameCube? Does it include N64, Dreamcast, Windows? Are those numbers negligible? I don't know. Resident Evil 4 is making its way up there with 4.9 million units. Pretty impressive since the game came out a few months ago. I think this one has to go up there because it's probably the best remake there is, in my opinion. And this is very interesting too. We have Resident Evil and Resident Evil 0 HD remaster, 3.9 and 3.8 million units respectively, but this is kind of interesting because number one just says PS3 and download, whereas the other one says PS3, PS4, Xbox One, PC, and download. What about the GameCube version? Is that not included? Then we got, of course, the original Resident Evil 3 Nemesis with 3.5 million. That's pretty good, but again, it says PS only, but we know it was released on a wide variety of platforms. Are those included? I don't know. Then, of course, I got Resident Evil Revelations is down there. That looks like a really fun game. I've actually never played any of the Revelations games, but I'd really like to give them a try. Devil May Cry 4. Wow, okay, that did pretty well. So this one's kind of interesting. We got Resident Evil 4, and this seems to be the PS4, Xbox One download version. Does this really count? And then we got Resident Evil 5 with 2.8 million units. The original Resident Evil with 2.75 million. This is on PlayStation, of course. And we got Operation Raccoon City. Again, a game I never really tried, but I'd definitely like to. Then you have Resident Evil 4. I mean, I don't know how they're going to put every version of Resident Evil 4 on here. There's too many of them. But this apparently this PC and download version sold 2.6 million copies. Dino Crisis, people are begging for a remake. I personally would love to see one because I've never actually played Dino Crisis, and I think if I did, maybe I was just so little, I have no idea, I don't even remember, but I would really love to try it out. Yeah, they're definitely bringing it up. So yeah, Resident Evil 6, it's a PS4 version. Resident Evil 5's, Gold Edition. I wish they kind of just put them all together, though. I'm really curious how much the total sales of Resident Evil 5 were. PS2, right, like this, the PS2 version of Resident Evil 4 was 2.3 million. Although I guess it's kind of cool, I guess, to see how well each of them did. Marvel vs. Capcom 3, the original Devil May Cry. This is the top 20, or sorry, top 50. Resident Evil 4 Wii Edition, 2 million copies. Alright, that's pretty good. Street Fighter 6 is catching up there, 1.9 million. It just came out last month, or I guess almost 2 months ago now. It's doing pretty good, though. It's a fantastic game. If you're into Street Fighter, you better get it. It is so good. Sorry, skipping through a lot of the games here just because we're mostly focusing on Resident Evil for this video. Although it would be interesting to go back and kind of look through this list and kind of talk about each of the games on there. Resident Evil 4, the original GameCube version, 1.6 million units. That's why they kind of wanted to push it out onto other platforms. They were like, alright, we did this exclusivity thing, thank you, but we need more money now. Resident Evil Outbreak, 1.4 million. That is another one I would like to give a try. I don't know if it's on any modern platforms, but Revelations collections on Nintendo Switch and DL, I'm just assuming means download. Code Veronica X, Resident Evil, 1.4 million. This was on PS2. Resident Evil number 1 on the GameCube, yeah, 1.3 million units. Huh, so I guess a few of those other ones just didn't even crack the top 100, huh? Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles is 1.3 million. Resident Evil 4 for downloads, I guess, PS3 and Xbox 360 is 1.3 million. Resident Evil 0 at 1.25 million on the GameCube, and Dino Crisis 2, 1.2 million units. Now this is what I'm talking about. Resident Evil Director's Cut DualShock Edition with the best soundtrack of all time at 1.2 million units. I gotta play this game. I promised myself, if I get 10,000 subscribers on my channel, or heck, even GPX Japan, I'm playing this game. The original Dreamcast version of Code Veronica, 1.4 million units. Again, not bad, but they knew, hey, the writing's on the wall with this Dreamcast. We gotta get this out of here. And so then we got the Resident Evil Director's Cut at 1.13 million units. This is the one you can't use DualShock with, but they did rearrange some things. They added that extra arrange mode, so it's pretty good. And that's basically it. So these are all of the titles that I guess broke 1 million target sales, which is pretty good. And there's a lot of Resident Evil on this list here, which is great to see. Now going back to this list for just a second, I'm really curious to see what's next now that Resident Evil 2 is the best selling game in the franchise. Do we continue in this direction with the new games? Maybe they have to go back to that really sort of deep horror type gameplay. They got away from it a little bit in Village and they felt it was like, too much in 7. But I mean, hey, give the people what they want, right? 12.4 million copies is nothing to scoff at. That is a lot, and it was the top selling game up until Resident Evil 2 dethroned it. Now, if you haven't played Resident Evil 2 Remake, I definitely recommend giving it a shot. It's probably the one Resident Evil game that's my sort of go-to recommendation for new players to the series. I love the original games. I love the remake of Resident Evil 1. They retain that classic fixed camera angle style, but I guess a lot of people aren't used to that now, and I just have to say, go for 2 if it's your first time playing an RE game. It is so good. Then, of course, you can play 7 too if you're really into horror games, because it's very different with that first-person perspective. 2 Remake is really good because you got the 2 stories, Claire and Leon. You even got their A and B routes, so you really have 4 total playthroughs with a bunch of extra story missions to do as well. There's some costumes, some extras you can get. It's totally worth it. But it really makes me curious, where does the series go from here? There's so many choices. There have been reports that Resident Evil 9 is coming and it's going to continue the story of 7 and 8. Then, of course, there's the question of what remake is next. We just got 4. Does that mean we're going to get 5 next? Does 5 even need a remake? And, of course, what about Code Veronica? And me, personally, I think Code Veronica definitely needs it. It's a fantastic game in its own right, just like the originals are. But they need to update it. They need to get in some really, really stellar voice acting. There's a lot they could do to modernize it, and it would just be a waste. It really would, because it's one of the best adventures, and some people think it's the best of the classic series. But I don't know, this is all pretty crazy news. I think it's great that Resident Evil 2 did so well. I think it's going to continue to do well, and maybe this is a sign for Capcom to really put effort into your games. Of course, Resident Evil 3 is a big topic of discussion for how much was cut out, and I mean, Capcom even thought so too, so they put in that extra Resistance game, but really, don't skimp on these remakes. We know what was there before. Die-hard fans are going to get upset, and new players just aren't going to go to it if there's not much value there. So, who knows? They do discount these games, and I got Resident Evil 2 and 3 actually together very, very, very cheap, which was nice. So if you haven't picked it up already, please, I highly, highly recommend it. But what do you all think about this? Does Resident Evil 2 even deserve to be this high up there? I don't know, I think it's quite the feat, but hey, I'd love to hear what you all have to say. We'll catch you all in the next GPX Japan. Take care.